untested waters off the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. This is the domain of Jaws itself, the legendary great white shark. The great white is now protected by South African law to save it from extinction at the hands of trophy hunters. But while one shark is being saved, under the shadow of the mountain in Cape Town docks, there's evidence of shark slaughter on a huge scale. Thousands of fins drying in the wind. Just fins. Dead or alive, the mutilated sharks were simply dumped in the sea. This wasteful and cruel trade is worth millions of dollars in the Far East. As the shark fin price goes up, Chinese gangsters fight for control of the trade, and more sharks die. All for this, shark's fin soup. Demand for this soup could wipe out the world's sharks. It's midnight in Cape Town docks. This is a base for the big tuna fishing fleets of Japan and Taiwan. And these are the boats which also bring back the shark fins. It isn't just gangsters who wait for them. So do the ladies of the night. Only the Mingtung 305 is unloading. Their main catch is 150 tons of albacore tuna, caught off South America and the Falklands. After a 4-month voyage, this Taiwanese ship has a cargo of tuna worth about $6 million in the markets of Hong Kong or Tokyo. The crew are a mix of Chinese and Cape Coloreds. For many of them, the Cape is home. It's 3 years since this crew docked here. There's a cheerful mood at the prospect of home leave and their special bonus, a share out from the sale of shark fins. Another happy man is the Mingtung's owner, Chen Chao Chen. He'll profit from the tuna, but he also deals in shark fins. Under the tuna, deep in the hold, are shark fins from 3 years at sea. Soon there'll be tons of fins for CC Chen to trade. For tuna boats like the Mingtung, shark fins are a bycatch. But because there's money to be made from sharks, South African boats are getting in on the act. At dawn, 100 miles along the coast from Cape Town, one of them sets out. The Baby Ronald is a 45-year-old pilchard trawler converted in a lash-up sort of way to longline for sharks. She has a license to catch any shark except the great white and must bring in the whole carcass, not just the fins. This is commercial fishing on a smaller scale to the Oriental boats, but the end result for the sharks is the same.
I will have to put the line at about 4 to 5 kilometers long, yeah? And that will right down to the bottom. About 400 or 500 hooks will go on that line.
Do you ever get great whites?
No, no, not on the bottom.
Very seldom.
Yeah.
Not on the bottom. Because the lines go right to the bottom of the ocean, and the great whites, they don't go far down as that. Great whites, you usually get them in shallower water. Water we fish in is too deep for the great whites, they don't go right down there. Very seldom.
If there's not enough sharks on that line, then we move to another place. But we must get about 50 to 60 sharks on a line to make it possible to work on it.
Alas for the captain's dream of a big catch. By early morning, the baby Ronald's bilge pump has broken down, and in effect she's slowly sinking. There's no alternative but to turn around and pot her back for repairs. Nearby, a very different outfit is on its way to look for sharks. A research team studying the protected great whites around Dyer Island, led by a man who actually loves them, Theo Ferreira.
They really have an unbelievable pulling power. You know, they're majestic, they're big, and I think the mystery, you know, this Jaws mystery that we've got, also seems to have an effect. Although I'm totally realistic about it, when you do see that big smiling jaw and that black eye looking at you, it does have an adrenaline surge. We've actually become what you could call sharkaholics. We've got to have doses of it, otherwise we degenerate and we can't function properly. Well, do you know what actually excites me about coming to this island? I actually call it Desire Island. I've come here full of anticipation, very excited, and for a week or two I really get immersed with working with white sharks. You actually get the smell of the island into your flesh eventually. We actually call this a white shark supermarket. You can imagine, you've got a big colony of seals pupping. Other side you've got a colony of birds, and the white sharks come up this narrow, very shallow channel. They've got a captive market, so it's almost like going along a supermarket and picking your merchandise off the shelves. So that is why it's got the nickname Shark Alley. It's not a case of just coming in and grabbing. Sharks have got to work for their food. The seal is no slouch. It's like a guy in a little sports car with performance and very good handling against the guy in the big petroleum truck that's got a lot of power, comes rumbling down the highway, but it can't make those drastic sharp little turns. You quite often see them going for what we call a shark sandwich. It's a seal, and the seal gets off and actually wins the battle at the end of the day.
Against man the hunter, the shark never stood much of a chance. The contest with the seal is quite evenly matched. The little seal wins this one.
When I think back on it, I don't think I could ever hook or try and capture a white shark again. However, I believe that it was a learning curve. You know, it's evolution. I was a hunter. I realized the stupidity of what I was doing. I realized that these were magnificent creatures with a dignity and a right to live. And once that realization sank in, I decided to do something to try and reverse the terrible slaughter that has actually taken place with the species over the years. And if I can make it 1% difference at the end of the day, I feel I would have paid my debt in some way or another to the white shark as a creature.
So far, it's only the white shark that's protected, and only in South African waters. The Wildlife Service does its best to enforce the law.
Powers as a conservation inspector is that we can board any vessel entering this harbour and within our 200-kilometre fishing zone area. We can inspect any vessel, go through them and see what they have got on board. The only shark that's protected in South Africa is the great white, so that's all we can really look at. All the other sharks we have to take a blind eye to. There's no legislation protecting them. It's hard to prove where they were caught. There can be white sharks caught outside South African fishing territory. So there's no point in prosecuting them because we will never win that. It's a pity.
Yes.
Morning. You're the agent of
We are the shipper.
ship. Okay. All right. The tuna on the Mengtun, it's not a permit holder. Can you tell me where it was caught?
Normally, the ship just came from near the Uruguay area. Anyway, we say the south area, you know. So it's not, it's in the public high sea.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell me you're offloading the tuna now? Have you seen sharks being offloaded now?
Not
The
yet.
amount of shark? Is it
Not
not
yet.
yet? Right, Arthur. I'm just going to go on board now. Just going to
Sure.
have a look around.
Sure.
Thank you very much. The hold is now nearly empty. And as you can see a lot of shark fin down below. There's one shark carcass I can see, plus a miscellaneous amount of different other fish. And of course, this shows you that it's all bycatch. This one hold, the other hold also has a lot of shark fins. By legislation, we say that all shark that are brought in South Africa must be brought in whole. So the shark fin can be on the one side, but the rest of the shark must be on board. But if it wasn't caught in South African waters, they don't have to bring in the whole shark. They can only bring in the fins. So it's very difficult to prove, and it's very difficult to manage the shark fin trade.
A tuna's a tuna. When it comes to shark fins, the crew wouldn't know or care whether fins were for a white shark or any other. Only the quantity matters.
How much do you think is on board now?
Well, I've only heard on about roughly about 7 to 8 tons of shark fin on board now.
Can you tell what shark that's from?
不同的 size 啊，不同的 size 普通的，这是 ordinary shark fin，
What?
just ordinary shark fin.
What's an ordinary shark fin?
Fin quality does matter to a Cape Town restaurateur, though he thinks the fishing is accidental.
They don't mean to catch the shark, actually. They don't catch the shark on purpose. They catch the tuna fish, tuna. While they are the tuna on hook, right? The shark bite the tuna. So they catch the shark. They only catch shark in this case, as well as some of the captain, some of the captain, yeah. They're looking after the crew very well. While they are coming back to Cape Town from Atlantic Sea, they saw a lot of sharks on the sea. They let them catch some shark. That is the bonus. The shark's fin usually is a tips for the crew. We put the shark's fin into the hot water, it's about 80 degree centigrade. Leave it overnight into the hot water. The next day we can take the skin off. And then we will bring it to boil and take away the soft bone. This is the soft bone here, and the fats around. This is a blue shark, they call blue shark. Actually, I think it's a tiger one. I'm not exactly, I can tell. But this one is a white shark that I can tell, because I've seen this one before.
If this is the fin of a great white, we'll never know where it was caught. There are too many operators fishing too many sharks. That's what worries Theo Ferreira.
if you look at the reality of the situation, the white shark's the apex predator. It's right on top of that heap. That is a creature that has been exploited. Now, when you come down to the lower hierarchies, like your soup fin sharks, which are being targeted very heavily today, it's shocking. You know, if you start looking at realities and facts and figures, it boggles the mind. You've got thousands of ships, Taiwanese, Japanese, there's South African operators, there's Spanish operators, going out with miles and miles and miles of long line and literally plucking thousands of sharks on a daily basis from the ocean, chopping off fins to satisfy some Oriental or other person's soup desires or whatever it might be. And at the end of the day, you're literally wiping out the shark stocks of the ocean. And the heartbreak tragedy about the whole story, at the end of the day, the chain reaction is going to come right down to your feet. The man that eats fish from the ocean, the man that makes his living from the ocean. We've got a shark that's just arrived here, a nice young one. So if you want to turn your attention there, we can possibly tag it. This is a real little baby. Oh, just tag it, tag. That's another one. Come on, come on. It's coming up.
Oh, taking now, it's a male.
It's a male.
White shark is a male.
Don't let him bang. Don't let him bang. Very small mark.
Sharks can smell blood in the water from miles away. So Theo and his team get chunks of seal meat from a research lab and trail them behind the boat as bait. The point is to lure the shark close enough for precise observation of size, sex, and behavior. Great whites breed very slowly, but since the hunting ban, Theo has noticed a small, encouraging increase in their numbers. Still, there's much more work to be done. We know very little about this or any other shark. One technique is to attach a numbered tag for quick recognition. The data goes to Cape Town for scientific analysis, and what we learn about the great white will help us understand all sharks. There are scores of smaller types of shark, which would be much more difficult for researchers to get at. The great white is big, bold, and often swims near the surface.
Actually gnaws the boat and now went for the boy. Oh, it's coming back. Yeah, it's done. Leave the boy alone, you fucker. Hey, come here.
Theo and his team have become very adept at working with the great whites. Still, it's a perilous task trying to attach a tiny tag to a huge thrashing shark. Every now and again, one gets away. It's mid-afternoon, and not far from Theo's team, the baby Ronald returns, with her bilge pump mended to resume her shark hunt.
Oh no!
A 5-kilometer long line is paid out astern. Onto this, the crew clip short lines every 10 meters or so, each of which has a hook baited with a pilchard. With 500 hooks out, on a good day they might catch 200 sharks on a single line. These will be smallish sharks. The equipment couldn't handle the big ones.
Now we are letting this line out, and we're going to drop down the anchor and we're going to wait. So that we don't lose our balls in the dark. We're going to drop down the anchor and wait a while so that the sharks can come by.
It's a dangerous business, pulling sharks aboard and clobbering them on the unlit deck of the Baby Ronald, even small ones. But there's a whole different order of risk on boats like the Ming Tung, with thousands of hooks and machinery which pulls in 40 miles of line at frightening speed. Even old hands have accidents. Rico was lucky to only lose an eye.
I was busy with the machine, and my one friend is paralyzed right through. The other one is dead because the hook got in here, and I've got it in here from this machine. Sometimes the way the ship moves, it's all the ropes coming together, and the twine and the hooks all coming up just like that. Now sometimes, say like nighttime, you see this light is going into the water. Now then there's a big sign on it. Now you can't see exactly where the sharks are coming up, you see. Now, say from 7 o'clock after we finish it, and that machine, they fix it up in the engine room. Then it's very fast, you see. Then that's the time we want to get finished, and that was the time when this thing happened.
Longlining is dangerous for the seamen. For the sharks, it's deadly. This is a Japanese boat, discovered finning sharks in a remote part of the Indian Ocean. Such butchery has never been filmed before, though thousands of boats, including the Ming Tung, do the same. And it's actually legal.
The only power he's got is his tail. You see, that's the only thing you've got to watch, because he can hit you overboard too, for that thing. Once it's up, you've got to put your foot on top of his tail, and same time, you must cut it off. And give him one in the neck and one here on his toe here. You've got to give him, and then he can do nothing. Then he can do nothing.
The shark is disabled, but this is not humane slaughter. Finning is monstrously cruel and wasteful. The shark is still alive while its fins are cut off and when its body is dumped over the side. No myth about sharks being man's enemy justifies live finning, nor does the seaman's desire for his bonus.
You can't just catch sharks every day, because today you only catch fish, tomorrow you only catch fish. Might, if the luck is there, you can catch 2 or 3 for a day, or sometimes you catch a lot of sharks, but then that's only the small fins, so that is nothing. You still got to get a lot of fins. I mean, then you can see you can earn money from it, you see.
After her night of long lining, Baby Ronald's modest catch of sharks comes into the little port of Gansbaai. This place has been processing sharks on a small scale for 100 years, including until recently the great white.
Before there wasn't any law against catching white sharks, so everybody catch it for the yaws and the tooth. But now it's been stopped 2 years or 3 years ago. So I hope it will stay like that now. I'm just interested in the soup fin shark that we use for the meat and the skin, the bone inside, and the liver. We're also using the liver now. So on the shark we catch on long line, we use every bit of meat and bone and everything actually of the shark. The Taiwanese trawlers and the other country trawlers that comes in, they're not using everything. They're using the fins because they don't get real money for the meat. The shark is too big to be eaten by people. And when they stay out for 3 or 4 months, when they catch tuna or other kind of fish, they're throwing the sharks overboard. And they're just cutting the fins off. No, you can't compare the two boats or Taiwanese trawlers to a boat like Baby Ronald. They are over 100 feet long, and it's not actually trawlers, it's quite big ships that's doing it. And I mean, you can't, they are hooks, they got lines for 30, 50, 60 kilometers of lines out, hundreds, thousands of hooks on. And that's why you can't compare it to our boats.
The Mingtong 305 is very different from a local commuter like the Baby Ronald. She's a Japanese design, built to withstand the roaring 40s and the oceans around Antarctica for months on end. Now she's finished unloading her tuna, she's moving to a new berth. Only some miscellaneous fish and the shark fins remain to come off. Behind this little Buddhist shrine on the Mingtong's bridge, the ship's owner, C.C. Chen, is planning the next voyage. Facing the prospect of 3 years at sea, the newly appointed captain is preparing betel nuts. Perhaps chewing these will calm his nerves. The deckhands are bundling up odds and ends. There's some yellowfin, swordfish, mako shark, and broken tuna. But the real business is going on down below. There are 8 tons of shark fins, which means that about 160 tons of shark were wasted. The crew don't spare a thought for the crippled sharks which they threw overboard. They're cheerfully contemplating a bonus of several £100 each. These fins are worth almost £100,000, and part of that sum will be shared out. In the Far East soup fin market, they'll be worth twice as much. And there are other, dubious ways in which still more money can be made.
My job is more than dangerous. I got to choose who to pick up, who to drive, and where to take him. I was only asked to carry shark fins to a certain destination and paid double. That I did.
Was it a large bundle of shark?
The whole boot and the back seat of my old Valiant. It could be at least be half a ton.
Worth what, would you think?
Oh, that is quite a lot of money in the Hong Kong market and South African market. After grinding, we'll run at about, say, 50 to 45,000.
What's grinding?
Grinding is to turn the shark fins into sugar-like particles, like maize, like millet-meal, like flour, you know, which are now divided into portions in bank plastic bags where they will be distributed in a higher price in the Far East. You want to die, Bones?
Yeah. What do they do with the ground up sharks?
They drink that, I think psychologically believing that it will help them in sexual expertise.
You don't credit it?
No, I don't.
You haven't tried it?
No, I wouldn't do that. I even hate the shark smell itself. But suppose I was born in the Far East, I might believe them. But at the moment, I took it as a psychological problem. I don't think if you are important, your cock can't be raised by any looking at a female. I don't think the shark fin will do that. That is just the killing of innocent animal for an unbelievable theory that never takes place.
Sheer volume of the shark fin trade has started to worry the leading marine conservationist in Cape Town, Nan Rice.
I was concerned about what was going on in Cape Town docks with regards to this shark fin industry, because I don't think anybody had really investigated it. So we did appoint an investigator to go down there and to get facts and figures as to what was going on.
Well, I didn't get very far with it, but I actually did manage to get inside one of the cold stores. And I must say that what I saw there amazed me. I counted 42 crates. Each of these crates weighs 800 kilos. From an average shark, you get about 4 kilos of wet fin. So with a bit of arithmetic, I worked out that just in that one cold store, those crates contained the remains of about 9,000 sharks. And that's just one store on one day. I mean, there must be literally millions of dead sharks whose fins are going through Cape Town every season.
I had to withdraw her from the docks because it became dangerous for her to continue that work.
Why did it become dangerous?
Well, because of the newspaper reports about certain people who had been abducted, others which had been found dead, and still others which had been murdered, which apparently appeared to relate to the shark fin industry.
struggle for the shark fin began approximately 3 to 4 years ago. And it was mainly by two rival groups. The one, well, you could call them gangs. The one is known as the Table Mountain Gang, the other one the K14 gang. The K14 gang consists mainly of Hong Kong Chinese, and it's called the K14 because the gang was formed in Hong Kong in a block of flats in room K14. The Table Mountain Gang consists mainly of local Taiwanese that are resident in Cape Town. Mainly people that have come over on visitors' visas, and all they do, they reapply for extensions. They're not supposed to work, but they all work with a shark fin. They're always normally armed, and they carry walkie-talkies on them, and yet when you approach them, they claim they're not working. The struggle came to the attention of the police after a kidnapping in Rondebosch in 1991. And during follow-up investigations, when it was shown that there was something more behind the kidnapping, that is when we became aware of the actual power struggle. And that's when there were various shooting incidents where houses were shot at of both groups of people. And at the time we suspected the opposition group. And then a couple of the Chinese came forward and explained to us what was happening regarding the shark fin.
We have heard that there are problems, that some people want more fins and they fight in order to get them.
Yes.
Well, that would be might be a problem for him. That was my question, was whether it is a problem.
如果有咱要买出来是咱哈，导致有这么一个冲突，对你有啥问题？
我无关的，这种我无咧插入。
It's nothing to do with those conflict or those benefit. I mean, interesting conflict.
你係講起一日都最好啦。
You only concentrate the albacore tuna is main cage, shark fin only for the crew, so it's nothing to do with them.
But his house was shot at, I think.
如果你係住嗰啲有前關嘅，
有啊。
Yes.
I stayed in Taiwan.
When he was in Taiwan.
Yes, but was that because of the tuna or because of fins?
如果係因為衰死，還是因為通報代志？
我唔知啊。
He doesn't understand at that time. Because he can't speak English, you know, so many trouble. Just say put down CC change name.
We are in Rondebosch, which is one of the higher class suburbs of Cape Town. There are a number of Chinese that live in the area that are involved in the different gangs. The houses have been shot at normally late at night or very early in the morning. The one incident, they fired approximately 14 shots at the house, that big glass window in its lounge, and not a single bullet hit the window. So it appears that the people just shoot without really aiming.
For what reason?
It's a form of intimidation to show the guy that the opposing gang is here and know where he stays and all that.
Does Mr. Chen have a problem with intimidation in his business? Let's be frank, the newspapers write of gangsters.
他说新闻都有报说这里都有流氓嘛。他说你有没有觉得有没有怕什么人会跟你来打架，还是跟你打手枪？
因为我什么时候早上出门就是到船上，如果没有的话，我就去逛街，自己一个人去买一些东西呀、船进来我就到船上了。只有这个事情了。我晚上不出门了，那我管他干嘛？我怕什么？我们要做什么坏事，我不怕。
He says he's not doing anything bad. Why does he need to be frightened of anybody? He says once his boats are in port, all he does in the morning, he goes down to his boats. He might go into the streets to buy a few odds and ends that he might need. And then he comes back and that's it. He comes back home and he doesn't go out at night or anything. And there's no need for him to be frightened of anybody. He don't feel he needs to be afraid of anybody.
No, I don't think that CC Chan is afraid of anybody. On the other hand, most people don't have their houses shot at.
他说大小丽，你是不怕人家，为什么人家还要跟你来到你家里来乱打手枪？
我怎么晓得？我回去台湾我都根本都不晓得。
He says he doesn't really know who shot up his home. He was in Taiwan at that stage.
C.C. Chen gives nothing away. There's too much money and power at stake in the secretive shark fin trade. Business is done at night. Rival gangsters seek out the boats with most fins to sell, and sometimes do deals at gunpoint. Prostitutes are used for information and favors. One small operator tolerated by the gangs is a madam who neatly combines running girls with dealing fins.
I'll go to the ship and I'll call for the bosun. He's the guy who's in charge of the fins. He'll say to me, are there any nice girls around? Which that's the first thing they always ask me because they know what I do. And then I tell him, yes, and I want some shark fins. And if you supply the right women, then you can probably get what you want from the boat. The dangerous side is that somebody wants shark fins and the other people have got it and they want what they've got. So then it becomes real gang warfare and then they really go all out for the kill. Well, I'm sure you've read the newspapers, how many people go missing and how many bodies get found. And the whole shark fin business all over throughout the world is it's controlled by mafia. And they don't stop at anything. They'll go to any length for the shark fins.
Oriental mafia gangs want this business all to themselves, but there won't be a fin trade if we go on killing sharks at the present rate. This is what an American scientist in Cape Town thinks.
The thing is, gangsters and such may add spice to it or whatever, but the thing to focus on, of course, is the actual fishery. And I think the thing is, when you get a situation, particularly in a first world country where sharks are suddenly perceived as being an underutilized resource, there's plenty of exploitative power available in boats that suddenly get converted for catching sharks and so on and so forth. This is happening here right now, that suddenly start fishing sharks, and pretty soon there are no sharks to fish. Pretty soon might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years. The most important thing that anybody can start to do is try to educate the public on what sharks are about. The thing is that there's no sense in trying to protect something that people perceive as being nasty and has no reason to survive.
Now, who of you know or heard about the great white shark before? So most of you. Okay, you can put your hands down. Now, if you look at these photos, you will see that you have a lot of dead sharks. Why do you think people kill these sharks? Yes? Because they? Eating people. You say they eat people. Great white sharks do not normally eat people. Sharks are animals. Sharks live in the sea like whales and dolphins do. So sharks are necessary in the ocean. Right, now I'm going to ask you, yes, that thing at the back there is a great white shark. We're going to go look at it right now. Yes.
It's easy to accept Theo in his role of crusader for the great white and all sharks. Yet, not long ago, he was a macho trophy hunter. What reason does a man have to make the profound change from shark hunter to shark conservationist?
It was a progression. It wasn't actually a case of a reason. At the particular time, I hooked up a white shark of about 4 meters off the Macassar Beach area, and we put a rope around its tail, and we were actually towing it back to the harbor. Now, invariably, when you tow a shark by the tail for a distance of 5 or 6 sea miles, you exhaust it to such an extent that it's all but dead when you get it to the harbor. This particular beast, when we got into the harbor, just refused to die. It was full of beans, it was thrashing around. I got a friend of mine to come down with a harpoon, and he actually slammed the harpoon through the gill plate so that it entered one side and came protruding out the other side, 6 times in total. The shark was literally gushing blood out of holes. Then I got hold of a .38 special revolver, and I fired 5 rounds into the back of its head. And at that point, the shark settled down in the water. I thought, oh, we've killed it. We put the boat trailer underneath the shark, and we towed it up onto the high ground. And when I climbed out and walked to the back, The shark was still thrashing, the eyes were rolling in the head, the mouth was gaping open and the blood was gushing out all these holes. And I think that was the first time in my life that I actually realized that it wasn't just a dumb fish, it wasn't an enemy like everybody made it out to be. It was a very beautiful animal with a tremendous dignity and an unbelievable will to live. And after that, I could never really bring myself to putting a hook back into the water. And I think that was the turning point, because although I stopped hunting white sharks, the desire of being with them and working with them and being involved with them didn't die. So I became an amateur observer rather than a hunter from that stage.
This creature is magnificent, the apex predator, worthy of our fears and of our protection. Yet the great white is only one part of an ancient order of marine life. It makes no sense to preserve one shark and slaughter the others.
Teach you is that sharks and fish do live together in one environment, in one place. They do not feed on each other all the time. They only feed on each other when they're hungry.
People, on the other hand, don't usually eat sharks because they're hungry. Shark's fin soup is a traditional delicacy which doesn't require 95% of the shark. That gets thrown away.
Yes, very nice.
For me it was quite nice, but not really South African stuff.
It is, yes, it is delicious, but not very, very delicious as you can imagine.
Delicious.
Delicious.
Eating very good.
The prices are more expensive, and people, while they have it, they know they pay so much money, they feel, oh, it is so expensive, and it tastes better.
On maybe on New Year, Chinese New Year, yeah, shark fin soup. Oh, very nice.
I wouldn't dream of touching a bowl of shark's fin soup, not ever.
The reason for me to put it on the menu is because it's a Chinese restaurant. It's a very famous Chinese dish, so I have to set it.
Sharks are older than the dinosaurs. They've lived in the oceans for 350 million years. Who knows what would happen to marine life if sharks became extinct? Against modern technology, they're powerless. Last year alone, it's estimated that 100 million were killed.
Up to a few years ago, the only good snake was a dead snake. Up to present date, the only good shark in the eyes of most people that get involved with them is a dead shark.
I think basically, when there's money to be made, you know, sustainability and rules, regulations, everything else flies out of the window and human greed takes over. And I think that's basically what it's all about.
Another happy man is the Ming Tung's owner, Chen Chao Chen. He'll profit from the tuna, but he also deals in shark fins. Under the tuna, deep in the hold, are shark fins from 3 years at sea. Soon there'll be tons of fins for C.C. Chen to trade. For tuna boats like the Ming Tung, shark fins are a bycatch. But because there's money to be made from sharks, South African boats are getting in on the act. At dawn, 100 miles along the coast from Cape Town, one of them sets out. The Baby Ronald is a 45-year-old pilchard trawler converted in a lash-up sort of way to longline for sharks. She has a license to catch any shark except the great white and must bring in the whole carcass, not just the fins. This is commercial fishing on a smaller scale to the oriental boats, but the end result for the sharks is the same.
I will have to put the line at about 4 to 5 kilometers long, yeah? And that go right down to the bottom. About 400 or 500 dudes will go on that line.
Do you ever get great whites?
No, no, not on the bottom.
Very seldom. Not on the bottom. Because the lines go right to the bottom of the ocean, and the great whites, they don't go far down as that. Great whites, you usually get them in shallower water. Water we fish in is too deep for the great whites. They don't go right down there. Very seldom.
If there's not enough sharks on that line, then we move to another place. But we must get about 50 to 60 sharks on a line to make it possible to work on it.
Alas for the captain's dream of a big catch. By early morning, the baby Ronald's bilge pump has broken down, and in effect she's slowly sinking. There's no alternative but to turn around and pot her back for repairs. Nearby, a very different outfit is on its way to look for sharks. A researched waters off the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. This is the domain of Jaws itself, the legendary great white shark. The great white is now protected by South African law to save it from extinction at the hands of trophy hunters. But while one shark is being saved, under the shadow of the mountain in Cape Town docks, there's evidence of shark slaughter on a huge scale. Thousands of fins drying in the wind. Just fins. Dead or alive, the mutilated sharks were simply dumped in the sea. This wasteful and cruel trade is worth millions of dollars in the Far East. As the shark fin price goes up, Chinese gangsters fight for control of the trade, and more sharks die. All for this, shark's fin soup. Demand for this soup could wipe out the world's sharks. Research team studying the protected great whites around Dyer Island, led by a man who actually loves them, Theo Ferreira.
They really have an unbelievable pulling power. You know, they're majestic, they're big, and I think the mystery, you know, this Jaws mystery that we've got, also seems to have an effect. Although I'm totally realistic about it, when you do see that big smiling jaw and that black eye looking at you, it does have an adrenaline surge. We've actually become what you could call sharkaholics. We've got to have doses of it, otherwise we degenerate and we can't function properly. Well, do you know what actually excites me about coming to this island? I actually call it Desire Island. I've come here full of anticipation, very excited, and for a week or two I really get immersed with working with white sharks. You actually get the smell of the island into your flesh eventually. We actually call this a white shark supermarket. You can imagine, yeah.
It's midnight in Cape Town docks. This is a base for the big tuna fishing fleets of Japan and Taiwan. And these are the boats which also bring back the shark fins. It isn't just gangsters who wait for them. So do the ladies of the night. Only the Mingtung 305 is unloading. Their main catch is 150 tons of albacore tuna, caught off South America and the Falklands. After a 4-month voyage, this Taiwanese ship has a cargo of tuna worth about $6 million in the markets of Hong Kong or Tokyo. The crew are a mix of Chinese and Cape Coloureds. For many of them, the Cape is home. It's 3 years since this crew docked here. There's a cheerful mood at the prospect of home leave and their special bonus, a share out from the sale of shark fins.